Catilian was a happy man. Happiness came easy to him these days, and it was easy to see. It was, however, just as easy to worry. He was rail thin. His deeply tanned skin was marked by so many scars that people told stories about how his journey was to follow a map that he wore on his skin. It made for a delightful tale for a delightful folk hero, right up until people asked to see. After that, their faces would pale. That stung Catilian, but he never really minded. This was his dream, and that was part of the price. Here, though, was a man out of legend. Catilian approached him because his name was the stuff of myth, and Catilian knew myth when he saw it. Aniernan. He was without his book, and there was no diamond-scaled dragon to be seen. But here was Catilian without his gold-spun sail. No, this was Aniernan. And so he had approached, shirtless and shipwrecked as he was, and Aniernan had greeted him warmly. No worry, no sting. Aniernan had seen the scars, but this wasn't the pointed ignorance of people too polite to bring something up. This was the warm familiarity of someone who had simply seen far too many things in a far too long life. Still, it was comfortable. It was kind. And in that instant, Catilian had fallen in love with him for it. Catilian had been bursting with questions, but he knew how stories worked. He could ask 3, maybe 5 if it was a blue moon, but he would only learn one lesson. That was the nature of stories. So, he had asked the one question he would have had he been a child. Can you tell me about the stars? Aniernan had smiled, held out a hand, and replied, Hand me your bow. Catilian had built the camp and Aniernan the fire. He built it low but hot as any sun. He added magic to it, and Catilian bit back his questions. Catilian had begun to hum something, and Aniernan smiled and joined. As the day closed its eye, Aniernan used flame and a stone hammer to smelt the sunset onto a piece of firewood. He then drew it to his knee and whittled it with a knife Catilian had offered. The last golden light of the sun crashed into the horizon, and in that moment, purely by reflex, the young Catilian breathed a piece of it in. When his eyes turned back to Aniernan, the Ancient One looked back at him with a raised eyebrow, followed by a slowly blooming smile. He had been impressed, and Catilian's chest swelled for it. That held the young man over until night had well and truly fallen, and their conversation was now the business of thousands of shamelessly peeking stars. Eventually, Aniernan inspected the needle-like shard of charred wood, and as he delicately and deftly began to replace the head of an arrow he had carefully chosen, he finally began to speak. What have you learned of stars? Catilian tilted his head. I know they're living creatures of great magic, or were. Most of them died in a long and bloody war, I think. Aniernan's answer came like a soft breeze. You know that, do you? Catilian looked back with a hint of confusion. I've met some of them, he said plainly. Aniernan gave him a long before inspecting the finished arrow. Then what do you hear of stars? Catilian knew that sound and focused all his attention on the old knight. That was the sound of someone telling a truth too big to learn when plainly told. Very carefully, Catilian proffered a small question. You mean like, what sorts of stories? Aniernan nodded softly. Catilian thought for a moment, then continued. Some people say that they are lost spells, other that they are broken pieces of old magic from an ancient war. I've heard once that they were ornaments in the creator's hair, or gems scattered from her dress. Catilian waited to be interrupted, but nothing happened. Well, I've heard it said that they are the eyes of our ancestors, that they are each a distant heaven, that they are our guardian angels made manifest in this realm. Aniernan remained silent, and Catilian's tongue tripped as he racked his brain for more stories. Some say they are corpses left from the Age of Fire, others that they are the last pieces of fire from the First Age. Catilian looked up and thought. There were other stories, but they were either foolish, childish, or propaganda. In the end, he looked back at Aniernan and shrugged. The Blade Father's face remained calm and smiling. Which of those do you think are true? Catilian was stunned. Not that he hadn't expected this sort of turn, but Catilian was listening, so he heard it. It had been a statement, not a question. This wasn't to be thought around or through, but into. That's how you learned these things. So he did the thing that would help him learn. He admitted his ignorance. I've learned, seen, and understood the history. Stars were creatures. They went to war, then most of them died. Their corpses still burn in the sky, others still shine. They are guardians and observers, ancient and patient. They have a long history, and they don't care to share it. He said it in a feather-light tone, eager to hear what was left to be said. Aniernan looked at him with eyes like a well. They were deep and singing. He smiled. You are right about that. His voice was like a fine instrument. Then he turned his eyes for the first time towards the night sky. His gaze swept it quickly, then found a single blue-white point of light in the far distance. Just as I am right about this. He kept his gaze on the distant star, then he drew the bow to match his aim. The string had barely kissed his cheek for the better part of a second before the arrow disappeared, and it flew into the night. The arrow drew a straight line into the sky, then collided with the small glint of blue light Aniernan had set his eyes on. In the next moment, they both changed course, the arrow spinning into the darkness as if falling into the sky, while the light hung on for an extra moment before falling loose, dislodged from the sky it had lived in for untold ages. It fell like a drop of rain, right into Catilian's hand. What he held was a sapphire filled with white light and dotted with near infinite facets. Catilian now held a palm-sized star in his hand, and as he marveled, the old knight spoke in a soft, dream-like tone, punctuating a perfect moment with an equally important lesson. He spoke. I could tell you the truth, but a piece of the magic lies in not knowing. Better then to ask yourself what else might be true.